Hello again. We've reached our final week together. I've shared many thoughts during this time, and you've done the hard work of confessing. I wish I could have heard each one of your stories. As women of truth, we will always struggle with our brokenness because we are imperfect humans living in an imperfect world. Our human nature tries to keep us stuck in darkness, but confession brings us into the light. You can't experience all that God has for you with secrets and behaviors that keep you in the dark. I know. I lived in darkness for years because of the secrets I kept. I was not walking in the light, and I was not in true connection with others. By 1981, I'd been keeping a secret for 7 years. I thought that keeping this secret was my only option. But at some point, it became clear I couldn't hold it in any longer, and I did the hardest thing I'd ever done up to that point in my life. I confessed to my husband that I'd been in a secret relationship with our pastor for nearly 7 years. I viewed what was happening as an affair. What I learned much later in life was that it was actually abuse. There's a big difference between an affair and abuse. Abuse is when someone has power over you and takes your choices away. An affair is a willing decision of betrayal. However, I was sure Jonas would divorce me. All I could say at that moment of confession was, "Hun, you know all these things about Pastor Taylor and the women? Well, I'm one of those women." He just looked at me with a blank stare. I said, "I'm sorry, and I'm a sorry person." That was the extent of my confession to him. At that time, I was an empty shell weighing 92 pounds. I couldn't hug him, I couldn't cry. I could barely look at him. And so I just walked away. I didn't realize it at the time, but this confession was one very small step into the light and a whole new life for me. It's in the light that we connect with each other. We often think that because we're Christians and go to church every Sunday that we're automatically walking in the light. Not true. We can choose to live in darkness and stay disconnected by keeping our secrets. It's exactly what I did for years. I followed the rules. Don't talk, don't feel, don't trust. Although I had a social life and talk with people, and I looked good, I never felt like I was connected because of my secrets. When we find ourselves in a dark place, we want God to do a miracle for us without assuming any responsibility. We set ourselves up for disappointment, and most likely our circumstances will never change. We stay in darkness because we're not able to be real. Coming from darkness to light is a difficult journey, but with faith, all things are possible. Sharing your past is hard work, and I know it takes courage. When I began taking responsibility for the way I felt about my past, I began to see it differently. Simply thinking about it is like a broken record. It keeps going around and around in our minds, but sharing out loud with others gives us a different perspective about what actually happened. You begin to hear it differently, and then you begin to change how you feel about it. This is called editing your history. It can be overwhelming, but over time, it becomes easier to do. I know the pain from our past can cast shadows of darkness on our present life, and we cannot imagine it any differently. When I first heard of this concept, I didn't understand or accept that it could change me, but it did. The first time I experienced this working was 1997. Jonas's mother, who was called Gruss Mommy, passed away. As we were going through her belongings, I noticed a large yellow envelope that read Anne's letters, written on the front. I realized inside were 10 years worth of letters, organized in order from 1977 to 1987, the darkest years of my life. At this time, my history was too difficult to remember. I had convinced myself I was a bad mom, and I didn't want to think about any of it. But these letters recapped the highlights of everything I did with my girls. My daughter Lavelle was sitting with me while we read them, and she said, "See, you weren't a bad mom." I was filled with life and excited that Gruss Mommy kept them for me to find one day. Because of those letters, I was able to look into my past and reinterpret all the pain, and the memories didn't hurt as much. That's called editing your history. Until I learned about this concept, I would simply pray and hope things would change. However, prayer alone seldom changes things. I do believe that prayer will change us, but prayer alone did not change me. I realized I had to take responsibility for my life. I prayed for a solid 6 years with tears and heartache. It sustained me, but it wasn't until I finally got up off my knees and began to confess that I began to change. I started my lifestyle of confession in 1982, and it's become a way of life for me. It's an ongoing process, but once you taste the freedom that confession gives you, you simply don't want to keep secrets anymore. When you're living a lifestyle of confession, any little secret that needs confessed will gnaw at your spirit until it's out in the open. There was a point in my life many years ago when I felt like I fully saw and embraced the power of confession. I lived it out every day. I was feeling like I was on top of the mountain, and I knew God had forgiven me, and I couldn't believe life could be this good. But it was during this time I still had a secret that kept gnawing at me. You see, I had confessed it to my therapist, which I thought was enough, and I was finished with this secret. But as time went on, I knew in my heart I needed to confess this secret to another person, my husband. My secret was I had an affair, and I betrayed Jonas years before. This time, it wasn't abuse. The affair was a result of unresolved issues concerning the abuse of my pastor, but it was a decision I willingly made and carried out. As soon as I confessed to my husband that day, the enemy jumped back on my shoulders and began to tell me all the lies that I had stopped believing. He told me, "You're not worth anything. You don't deserve anything good. Jonas is way too good for you. You're not as good as what you think you are. And you really haven't overcome anything. I mean, if people only knew the real you." Wow. The new dimension I was living in was slowly crumbling around and inside me. The lifestyle of confession I worked so hard to achieve was slipping away in that moment. I was believing all the lies again. Suddenly, God spoke into the darkness that I was slipping into, and he said, "Anne, have I not done enough for you? I sent my son. I let him live on earth 33 years. He felt everything you've experienced. They killed him. He died on the cross. He was resurrected, and today he's living at the right hand of the Father. And he is interceding for you." Then again, he said, "Have I not done enough? Anne, will you forgive yourself?" This was the first time I ever thought about the need to forgive myself. That was the day the waves of grace washed over me from the top of my head to the tips of my toes. The grace that I heard about and sang about and believed in, that day, it became my grace. That day, I believed and I received God's grace for me. That day, I was no longer guilty as charged. Today, I no longer carry shame because I was finally able to forgive myself. The darkness tried to take over my life that day, but I had resolved to live in the light. I wanted to live the ongoing lifestyle of confession, take responsibility for my life, and accept the grace freely offered to me. Today, we're surrounded by so much darkness. Our culture allows us to numb ourselves with technology, sex, alcohol, and toxic relationships. When we share our stories, light overcomes the darkness inside of us. Sharing your story is required to live an authentic lifestyle, and confession will impact you, your family, and your community. My prayer is that you find the courage and strength to share your stories and continue this journey called confession. I hope it continues for you long after today, and that your story becomes a part of a movement all over the world that inspires women to share their stories.